Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. I am Pasta Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Johnny Sue is spinning on those ones and twos. And we have a very special show today. This is a show I've been waiting to do for a long time. I've been wanting to have these conversations. You know how inspired I am by certain people like Dr. Cornel West, Reverend Barber, and Fred Hampton. And the unfortunate murder of George Floyd has sparked a lot of protest. And we've been going out and covering them. And I've been paying close attention to a lot of speakers out there that I wanted to bring into the show. Some people I feel that when I hear them speak, I really resonate with them. And they can really build bridges and bring people together. And the other day I was out in Pasadena in the protest, and a young man was calling out the politicians for their little games and letting them know, hey, you might be here today, but this ain't no parade. And where were you the other day? Where were you the other month? And to me, electoral awareness, because it seems like a lot of people within these protests are trying to, hijack it to get you to vote for Joe Biden, to vote against Donald Trump. But I don't believe that Donald Trump is the problem. We believe the system itself is the problem. And so today we have with us one of the great speakers that I saw out there this whole last 2 weeks. He's an advocate, a peacemaker, a Christ lover. He's influential. He's an entrepreneur. Today we have Brandon Dante Lamar with us. How you doing today, Brandon?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to be alive.
I hope my introduction was good enough for you. Usually I hype it up really hard, but today I want to stay in a kind of serious zone. So we're going to get going with these questions. I'm going to let Fiorella start off and take it right off the jump.
All right.
Absolutely.
Brandon, right now we have a diversity of opinions within the protesters. I was there Sunday, and there was a lot of speakers, and a lot of them ended up not agreeing with the whether this is headed towards what actually police brutality is, what it means to defund the police. All of these different opinions as to what on Obama, let's say, different opinions on the Black Panthers. So I want to ask you, what is your opinion on the Black Panther Party and what they did back then in the 60s, and what's also your opinion on Black Lives Matter now as a movement?
I think my mindset goes back to when you talk about the Black Panther, it talks about revolutionary, right? It talks about security. It talks about, in some ways, policing our own community, policing ourselves, protecting our community. And so that's what I see as far as the Black Panther Party. A lot of people was afraid of the Black Panther Party because it actually gave African Americans the push to actually speak for themselves, not only speak for themselves, but like I said before, police our own community, protect our own community. And so that's what I believe was one of the greatest impacts of our time was the Black Panther Party. In some ways, you see the Black Panther Party coming about now and coming back together and coming in certain communities now because we see the need for us to protect ourselves and protect each other as a community, as a body. When it comes to Black Lives Matter, I think Black Lives Matter is a great organization that has pushed millennials to go to the next level when it comes to activism, when it comes to protests, when it comes to actually getting our voice to be heard. I think the Black Lives Matter movement has pushed us into a new level of actually seeing what should have been a long time ago and has helped us push to actually get our voice to the next level. So, yeah.
And do you think using both is effective? Like using the mechanisms from the Black Panther Party and Black Lives Matter, because they're a little bit different, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it is effective, and here's why I say that. The reason why I say it is effective is because one party cannot do everything, if that makes sense. So one group cannot do everything. I believe, me personally, that we all have a part to play in this new revolutionary time. And so some of us are called to protest. Some of us are called to sit at the table. Some of us are called to riot. Some of us are called to have conversations behind closed doors. Some of us are just are required to actually speak to our neighbors or If we, I've been getting a lot of questions of what do you see as white people? What do you see their role is being in this day and time? And my question is, the biggest thing for what we call white people or Caucasian people to do at this time is to support the voice of what's happening in our Black communities. I think the difference between what's happened before in the civil rights days, or even what's happened in the 1992 Rodney King riots, and now is that now we have the backing of the white voice. And not only the backing of the white voice, but we also have the backing of the white dollar as well, because now we're starting to see that our white brothers and sisters are actually starting to support and buy into Black-owned businesses as well. So I think hand in hand, it works together.
So a lot of people have been arguing online, especially some people on the right saying we can't defund the police. That's how are we not going to have a police? Is that abolishing the police? And then you have people arguing on the other side. What does it mean to defund the police?
To me, what it means to actually defund the police is, let me be plain and say, I believe we need police officers. I have friends that are police officers. One of my first mentors was actually Altoona Sheriff deputy by the name of Samuel Estrada. And so I believe that we need police officers. I believe that we need the police department. But I believe that police officers should stick to policing. Police officers are not social workers. They're not therapists. They're not homeless aides or anything like that. I believe that they are police officers to serve and to protect. And I think that's what we get to some of the trouble that we're starting to see in our communities, is that you have police officers that are not trained to deal with mental health, our mental health population, or not trained to deal with somebody who is really heavily on drugs. And so then we start to see that, hey, they're not following my demands. They're not obeying my command. And so then you see the issue of police violence, police brutality and stuff like that. But then also you have these other instances where the man is not on any medication, or he doesn't have a mental health illness or anything like that. And we still see these police brutalities happening. So for me, I believe defunding the police doesn't mean that we just get away with the police. I believe that we need to start seeing a change in our police system, meaning this: we need to start seeing less of a budget goes into actually policing and more of a budget going into our youth programs. That's actually being effective, not only as a community as a whole, but being effective into the communities. And like, for instance, in Pasadena, our Northwest Pasadena community is what we call our the community that needs more of an assistance, right? So what youth programs are we actually putting in to these areas that's going to help us? And I think defunding actually the police department will actually allow us to help fund these programs for our youth. Not only that, but it also will help us with homelessness and actually economic development for our African American communities. So it's not just saying that we just want to just get rid of the police and kick the police out the door. It's saying that we can actually use some funding in other areas. We can place funding in other areas that might need more help. And so it actually, if there is a crisis with the police department when it comes to a mental health individual, we can actually call a mental health professional to come and assist the police officer instead of having the police officer deal with these situations all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, you got another question?
Yeah.
A follow up? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So a lot of people have been having this debate between what is more important, the class divide that we have in the United States, because right now we obviously have a huge class divide. We are in the middle of a recession. It's going to get worse. People were poor before this pandemic. They're more poor now.
Absolutely.
Then we also have the racial divide, the racial issues that have not really been fully dealt with in this country, that was founded, of course, a lot on pillaging, on imperialism. And so for me, the debate isn't which is which, it's both. But there's this debate between class reductionism and racism, the racial issue. So in other words, which is the core issue? The oligarchy, the capitalism, the establishment, the way, things are falling apart, or race, or both? to you?
I think that they're both an actual issue. In my mindset, I think they're both an actual issue. I think we have to figure out what we're going to deal with first. They both need to be dealt with, but I think racism is something that we've been, especially in the African American community, that we've been fighting since slavery and even before slavery for the last, I think, 400 years, even past 400 years. So that's something that we've been dealing with. But it even goes into even systematic racism, whether it's systematic racism in the police department, where you see that African American community, in the African American and brown communities, we're being stopped way more than we see our white brothers and sisters, or even our Asian brothers and sisters, or even another race. And so we're being stopped more in that area. Even when it comes to political reign, there's systematic racism when it comes to the political reign. And so that's why when Craig started talking about how I was talking at City Hall the other day, my thing is, why do you show up when it seems like it's time for you to share your voice, but you don't show up when it seems it's time for other people, for you to listen to other people and listen to our concerns? And so I believe in the political arena, there's systematic racism. Even when it comes to our Black sisters giving birth, we have the African American community has the highest rate of death in the process of giving birth. And so that's another thing that we see systematic racism to, because I just heard of a story the other day of one of my friends. She's actually a nurse, and she had a patient who was African American, and she was actually bleeding from the inside. She gave birth. She was bleeding from the inside. No doctors came and see about her. Her husband asked for help. Nobody came to see about her. And then she literally had to get on the phone with her personal doctor, and her personal doctor ran in there and literally started giving her aid right in front of everybody else. So we see that this is happening more often in the African American community than we do see in any other race. And so I believe that the real issue is race. Once we continue to fight this thing, we call it demon, right? Once we start seeing this demon, we start to fight this demon of race, then we can actually start getting to the core issues of also class, and dropping. For me, I don't think it should be no lower, middle, or high class parties. I believe we all should be on one level. We all need the same things. But then also, when I look at class, sometimes I drive in the Lavinia area because I'm from Pasadena. So I drive in the Lavinia area, which is right above the Rose Bowl. And if I drive above the Lavinia area, what I don't see is, I don't see me personally, my people of color, number one. And then number two, I also don't see any schools, because the actual public school that we had up there is shut down. And then number three, I don't see any police officers patrolling those areas. So you mean to tell me you can patrol Northwest Pasadena area, but you're not controlling those areas? So we see that even in the class ages of what we see. But for me, I think that we all should be on one level in my eye. But I think we have to focus on racism first, and then we can continue to tackle on other issues.
Okay, let me push back at you a little bit right here, because this is something I would always get criticized for saying, and people would say, well, you have that opinion because you are a white man. But really, at the end of the day, the oligarchs are the ones who are pulling the strings. They use race as a weapon to keep us divided so we don't join together, a la Bacon's Revolution, whatnot. Fred Hampton in that room speaking to white people, black people, letting them know they're trying to keep us separated so we don't join together hand in hand and defeat them. Isn't that
Absolutely.
the real common enemy first, that if we eliminate the oligarchs who have put this racial divide within our system so we fight each other, isn't that tackling the core issue first? Because I think a lot of poor white people, there might have a race issue out there with a lot of people, but they really don't have any power. As a white man, I can't get in a room with a Jeff Bezos and tell him what's going on. They are the ones who exploit the freedoms. And I think at the top of the chain, that's what we have to take on first. Your opinions on that?
No, I totally agree. I think like I said before, everybody has their place to play. And so we have to understand that since everybody has their place to play, yes, we should tackle those people who are of influence, because those people who are of influence actually take on. Here's my quote that I would say. Some people, because I have influence, my opinion becomes somebody else's facts. So a person like Jeff Bezos, like you just mentioned, he can actually share his opinion, but his opinion, because he have influence in certain areas and in certain communities, they would take his opinion as facts. That just because he said it, that means it's facts. And so that's what we're starting to see. And that's what we've been seeing in this whole place of monopoly that we're playing, that America has been playing for so long. We see these issues is that the community takes on these higher up, they take on their voices and they take on as facts, and we start to follow these voices. But when we actually start to tackle them, and tackle their systems, then we can actually start to actually what we consider to be tearing down Jericho wall, right? And we can start getting to the real core issues. But for me as a whole, I think that now what we're seeing more than we've seen ever before is we're hearing the voice of our white brothers and sisters, and they're not silent anymore. If you go to any of these protests, you see that there's more white people than it is black people. There's more Asians than it is black people. So our brothers and sisters of other races are now starting to come together to say, yes, there is an issue. Black people have been saying that there's an issue. We've been saying that we want equal rights. We've been saying that Black Lives Matter. We've been saying that we want to go and do and say everything and be in an equal economy bracket as everybody else. But now everybody is finally starting to see that, yes, this is an issue. We have been being murdered by the police department. We've been being stigmatized in systematical racism. And so this has been happening, but now we're starting to see that our brothers and sisters of other races are now seeing that, yes, it is an actual problem.
Yeah, and you mentioned that we now have the white voice out there, we have the white dollar out there, whatnot. But I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, because I think that sometimes if we get that vague about the white dollar or the black voice, whatnot, it can get us into a slippery slope. And I want to know what my responsibilities are as a white man, because I thought my responsibilities were to definitely get out there with everybody when somebody takes the life of a human being the way they did the police state. But you yourself, you know what I'm saying? When you spoke, I saw Mr. Kennedy, Councilman Kennedy, shrink in his clothes. You know what I'm saying? And it just shrugged down. And when you say we support black voices at time, that can get us into a dangerous slippery slope, a la Barack Obama, for instance, who was an imperialistic president. Isn't that a slippery slope when we make it that vague and that simple that we just listen to these voices? Shouldn't it be certain voices that we listen to? I mean, because the big sleep happened is what I call with Barack Obama, where a lot of people just got behind him no matter what, and then a la imperialism, we were bombing countries left and right. What's your thoughts on that?
To me, I believe that every voice, and I say this in respects to everybody, all of our voices matter, right? I can say one thing, and I can say it for a long time, but until people start echoing what I start saying, then that's when change really starts to happen. And so I believe everybody's voice matter, because the other day I was just a young guy from Pasadena who spoke at the steps of City Hall. And now people are calling my phone asking me, okay, what do I think about this? What about this? What does actually next steps? What is next steps for us? So I believe that we need to listen to everyone's voices, because we all have an opinion. We all can see change in different ways. But for me, I think that is very pivotal that we watch and we actually dissect our leaders in a way where we actually know where they're really coming from. Because some of us, we only elect people because they're Black, right? The Black community only elects certain people because they're Black. Some other races might only elect somebody because they're part of their party, whether it be Democratic, independent, or whatever. So this is what we have to do. But I think personally, we have to start dissecting our so-called leaders who are in the public, meaning that if you say that you're going to focus on homelessness, why are we not focusing on homelessness? If you say that we're going to start focusing on economic development, why are we not focusing on economic development? If you say that we're going to focus on our school system, why are there still schools being shut down in the city of Pasadena? year after year after year, we see it. So what we have to do is we have to start dissecting our leaders and holding them accountable for whatever they say that they're going to do. So that goes for Kennedy, that goes for our Mayor Tornick, that goes for Tyrone Hampton, that goes for Steve Austin, and everybody else who's on the city council. We need to start holding them accountable. And not only that, we need to start holding them accountable to hold our city manager accountable, because
Marvel.
it's his job to actually hold the police chief accountable. It's his job to hold the fire chief accountable. It's his job to hold the other directors in our city accountable. And so once they start holding each other accountable, which is our job to hold them accountable so that they can hold whoever's under them accountable, then we can actually start seeing change. But I think the real issue in all of our cities is that we don't hold our leaders accountable, and then we see issues rising up that has been there for so long.
Yeah. It's funny because you talked about Marmol on the Steve Marmol, the city planner and the city manager. I caught him an hour before I met you on the streets there, and I just jumped on him with a camera and started questioning about the police brutality and the police vehicles, because once again, he writes the checks for those things, for those vehicles. So I caught him. Let me just ask you one question before I pass it on to Fiorella. Do you think the majority of white people out there right now protesting, they're out there protesting because of white guilt? Or do you really think they're sincere about changing systemic racism? Now, I got this little clip up here from Muhammad Ali, because I thought Muhammad Ali really had a way to transcend and get people to get aboard and understand. So let me just play this quick clip and then give me your answer right after.
Cool.
I'm not just a boxer. I do a lot of reading, a lot of studying. I ask questions. I travel these countries. I watch how people live, and I learn. And I always ask my mother, I said, Mother, how come is everything white? I said, why is Jesus white with blonde hair and blue eyes? Why is the Lord's Supper all white men? Angels are white. Pope and Mary and even the angels. I said, Mother, when we die, do we go to heaven? She said, naturally we go to heaven. I said, well, what happened to all the black angels when they took the pictures? I said, oh, I know. If the white folks was in heaven too, then the black angels were in the kitchen preparing the milk and honey. She said, listen, you quit saying that, boy. I was always curious, and I always wondered why I had to die to go to heaven. Why I couldn't have pretty cars and good money and nice homes now. Why do I have to wait till I die to get milk and honey? And I said, Mama, I don't want no milk and honey. I like steaks and I said, milk and honey is a laxative anyway. Did they have a lot of bathrooms in heaven? So anyway, I was always curious. I always wondered why. You know, Tarzan is the king of the jungle in Africa. He was white. White man. I saw this white man swinging around Africa with a diaper on, hollering, oh! Do you all see Tarzan over here? Right, Tarzan? Yeah. And all the Africans, so he's beating them up and breaking the lion's jaw. And here's Tarzan talking to the animals, and the Africans been there for centuries, and he can't talk to the animals. Only Tarzan can talk to the animals. I always wondered why. And Miss America was always white. All the beautiful brown women in America, beautiful suntans, beautiful shapes, all type complexions, but she always was white. And Miss World was always white. And Miss Universe was always white. And then they got some stuff called White House cigars, White Swan soap, King White soap, White Cloud tissue paper, White Rain hair rinse, White Tornado flow wax. Everything was white. And the angel food cake was the white cake, and the devil food cake was the chocolate cake. I said, Mama, why is everything white?
So, you know, I mean, you'd be a fool to think that racism wasn't sewn into our society and whatnot, you know. But Muhammad Ali had this elegant way of explaining to it, like a lot of white people were like, oh, I get it, kind of, what's going on. Do you see that with today's kids, or do you think they're just feeling guilty and they're out there, or are they really ready to get in there and learn about systemic racism? Go ahead, Brandon.
I think there's two ways to it, right? I think that the generation before mine and the generation before that generation is actually feeling guilty of what's happening. But I think that we have a generation, which is the millennial generation of our white brothers and sisters, that are actually out there because they feel that we should be equal, and they actually are sincere about their voice. That's what I believe. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people in my generation didn't really know to the extent of what I would say they wouldn't know the extent of what actually happened in their history, right? Because we only share some things that we want to share. So I would say my generation of white people are actually really sincere and really coming together to say, hey, we really have a voice in this, and we really need to share our voice, and we really need to stop being silent. I don't know if you saw this video. I saw a video the other day, and it was this young girl actually going off on her parents, and she was like, no, you, like, their parents was like, we don't believe in Black Lives Matter, and we don't know why they're out there supporting this and the other. And this little white girl was literally throwing dimes. And when we call it throwing dimes, we meaning giving education, like showing her parents educated views of why Black lives actually matter and what Black lives actually has been going through for so long. And so it's not only, I think, to me, it works hand in hand, because sometimes we really don't get to the next step of revolution, of our revolution, until we actually start feeling guilty of what we've been involved in, right? And so I think for the older generation of white people, they're actually feeling guilty of what's been happening to the Black race and what's been happening to the brown race. But then when we talk about the millennials of the white race, they're actually, I feel, me personally, I feel that they're actually concerned, and they're actually being genuine. And the reason why I can actually say that is because last week, me and a group that I'm a part of, called Cultivate, we actually went to Jackie Robinson Park, and we held a little forum there, because what we wanted to do, we feel that, okay, protesting is good, rioting is great, all this stuff is fine. We can protest with 1,000 people, we can protest with 25,000 people, but until we actually start hearing the voices of each other, then that's when we can actually get to what we're going to do from here. And so we planned something at Jackie Robinson Park last Wednesday. And we literally we had 150 people actually show up to this event, and we separated them into 8 groups, and they actually were able to share their voices of why they feel concerned of what's going on. And literally, when I tell you, I haven't seen so many people crying in one space, especially at a park. It was, I mean, millennial kids, white kids crying because they felt the pain of what's going on in their society. But then also some of them felt that their parents don't understand what's actually going on. And their parents feel that this really is not an issue to them and they shouldn't be focusing on it. But they feel that this is an issue because it's happening so close to them. These are the people that they go to school with. These are the people that they work with every single day. So they feel the pain of it. And so we literally sat there and we came up with strategic ways of how we can actually help each other go from next steps. Because like I said before, I believe that rioting works. I believe that policy works. I believe that protesting works. But there comes a time where we actually need to go for next steps. What are the next steps? Are we going to continue to riot? Are we going to continue to protest? What are we going to do after this? What are we going to do when the voices are actually quiet? Or how can we continue to put fuel to the fire so that the voices never do shut down? And so, yeah.
See, my next question was, is it more about police brutality, or is it more about race? Is the police brutality more about racism or elitism? Because, we often talk about, we want equality, but the equality today between the uber rich and the everyday person in America is so low. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be equal, but we should be equal at a higher level. In other words, we should be going after the oligarchs because they're the ones, it's all about resource extraction. When 420 people in this world own 80% of the resources, therein lies the problem. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that I'm saying that, hey, I don't want us to be equal. I'm saying that we have to go up higher and we deserve more, because 30 years ago, there was a lot more white homeowners than there are today. Nowadays, most of the kids are renting because they don't have the money. In other words, I think that a lot of white people slept on this in the 70s and the 80s. And then, you know what? The oligarchs came for them, and now they're coming for them. I even heard Reverend Barber even say there are 8 million more poor white people nowadays than black people. Now, there's a lot more white people in the United States than there are a lot of black people, but that's way too many poor people. 650,000 people homeless on the street, a lot of black and white people together. This is an issue where I think we got to get eye to eye and take down the common enemy. Your quick thoughts on that, and I'm going to hand it over to Fee. Sorry.
My thing with that is we can get more done together than we can apart.
Absolutely.
And that's why I continue to say that every voice matters, because when we actually start breaking down these barriers and breaking down these walls and really getting to these people who's been oppressing our people for so long, then we can start seeing it. One thing that because you start talking about housing and people who own housing and stuff, I saw something the other day that said that the Pasadena only has 4% of Black people now. Before that, it was 16%. Before that, it was 20 something percent. But now Pasadena, Black people in Pasadena is only made up of 4%. Not only that, but you don't even see that many Black homeowners in Pasadena that you used to see. Because now, either between the 80s and 90s, our grandparents died off and they left their house to somebody and they sold it, or whatever the case may be. So now you see that dropping down. And so this is why we're saying that and this is one thing that I start using, is that we have to start buying back the block, because what we see that is that whether you believe it or not, our economy really does matter. Our money, our dollar really does matter. And so when we have Black owned businesses, not only just Black owned businesses, but when we have businesses that are focus is on everybody and not just the greed of what we can get. And I need more of this and I need more of that. But when we actually can have businesses in our community that focus on the need of our community, then we can actually tackle something. But it even goes into homelessness, right? How are we going to deal with the homeless? And I think it goes back to what we talked about defunding the police. That's another way that we can actually tackle homelessness. Another way we can tackle homeless is that every other year we're hearing our city council talking about how they're going to up taxes in our community. Okay, you keep upping taxes, but we ain't never seen none of this money go to homelessness. We ain't never seen none of this money goes into our foster care system. We ain't never seen none of these money going to our youth program. We ain't never seen none of these monies going to our mental health system. So what are you actually doing with all the money that we see that you're asking us for, right? And so I think that we need concrete answers from our leaders to say, okay, what are we doing here? What's next? What is our dollar buying? But going back to the point I made before, we have to get back to buying back the block, because our vote, our stuff matters. I don't know if you also seen, it was another video that came out on Sunday about the Fair Oaks Laundry mat owner, and he's going to his neighbors, talking down to his neighbors because his neighbors had Black Lives Matter on their car, and he's like, well, what do you mean Black Lives Matter? Like, they don't live where we are. And he literally went on his neighbors, and literally the next day we find out that we went right there and we protested, and he came and he boarded up his business. You're not about to be in our neighborhood collecting our money, and you're downgrading the people that is actually supplying you and putting money in your pocket. That's not what's going to happen. And so I believe that when we actually start taking these steps and holding these, not only our political leaders, but our business owners accountable for the community that supports their business, then we can actually start seeing economical growth in our communities.
Yeah. So a lot of Black activists are against using the term people of color right now. They want to specify Black particularly. So what is your opinion on that? And what do you think of African descendants of slaves, or ADOS?
I think, it goes down to a line of what we've been called. We've been called people of color. We've been called colored. We've been called Black. We've been called Negroes. And the list goes on and on and on. We have a list of names that we've been called, right? For me, if you're going to call me out, just make sure it's with respect. And so respect means you know what you can call me and you know what you can't call me. So I can't speak for every single Black person, but I know that when it comes to what you consider me as, make sure that you put some respect behind what you consider me as. So you can call me African American, you can call me a Black person, you can call me a Black brother, whatever the case. But then flip side of it is, you know what not to call me as well. So I think I can leave that right there, because I can't speak for everybody on that segment. When it comes to African American or African slaves descendants, I believe that we have to respect our ancestors that came here before us. Because here's the thing, this land that we're standing on was taken by somebody. America took this land from somebody as well. And so when we came on the scene and our Black slaves, our Black ancestors, our African ancestors that came here, I believe we have to respect them. And we respect our ancestors. And that's why we continue to fight, because they fought so long to get out of slavery. It seems that we're still in slavery in some aspects. We're still in chains in some aspects. And so I believe that we really have to continue to fight to allow, number one, our voice to be heard, but allow systematic change to be broken off of us, because systematic racism is one of the ways that we're still in bondage. Police brutality is another way that we're still in bondage. Economic development is another way that we're still in bondage. And so in some terms, we're still living out this so-called term of slavery that our African descendants came through.
And on that note, reparations. Reparations is a very polarizing subject to a lot of people. A lot of people who are white just feel like it's not fair to put the economic strife on so many generations thereafter. A lot of people are also poor right now. So when you bring up the topic of reparations, they're like, well, is it really fair that I have to pay for something my ancestors did? That's the common thing that I get when I talk about reparations. Do you think that something like reparations is possible? What would it look like? And do you think it would actually, pass in the United States right now?
Here's my thing. And here's why I get somewhat upset when we talk about reparations, right? Because we only get a set, and we only have a rebuttal when it comes to African Americans or of African descent receiving their reparations. But you have other races that have received reparations from the United States without no rebuttal.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to Africans or African Americans asking for their reparations or seeing what we can actually get from all the things that we've been through, I mean, we've been through more than any other race in the United States. And when it comes to reparation, or when it comes to getting what we feel that we deserve, or what we feel that we've been through, or what we paid for mentally, what we paid for emotionally, what we paid for physically, because America was built on the back of African Americans. If you look on, even if you go back, we can go all the way back to the slave days, but let's even go back to recent with all the inventions that African Americans have created. And it's not just African Americans that are using the inventions that we created. The whole world is using these inventions. And so why can't we get paid for our reparations of what we've actually paid for? We paid to be paid. But America feels that we don't deserve to be paid. So my question is, why do you feel that other races deserve to have reparations, but you don't feel that African Americans deserve reparations? Do I feel that we're going to get reparations? At this point, I don't know. I think that's the best answer I can give, is that I don't know. I feel that they're going to continue to fight against it. So at this point, I do not know.
Here's my point. I think reparations should be paid, but I think it should be paid by the people who benefited from it. And back then, if you even talk about slavery, it was big cotton. It was, the general public didn't own slaves a lot. There was a small amount of people who did. And in fact, the Civil War, they convinced a bunch of white people to fight against their own interest of having jobs, you know what I'm saying? By keeping slavery. So shouldn't reparations be paid by, once again, the people who benefited most from it? The big cotton owners. It was like Johnson & Johnson back nowadays. Those are the ones who really benefited from slavery. It's the elites, the oligarchs. Shouldn't they pay for the reparations? Shouldn't we frame it that way?
I mean, yeah, we can look at it that way, and it's real. It's a good way to look at it. But then I also go into this stimulus package that we just went through, right? Here's my issue with this stimulus package. You gave people that were in a certain tax bracket, or a certain percentage of what they made, $1,200, and then also if they had kids, they got an extra $500, right? Mm-hmm. But then also you have this small business loans that you're giving out to these businesses. My question is, why did Staples Center receive $4 million?
Yeah, the
my
Lakers.
Question is, why did Ruth Chris? My question is, why did Ruth Chris receive $2 million?
Yeah.
So you see where I'm coming from there is that when it benefits America, then they want to come through. But when it doesn't benefits them, then it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And this is the question that we have. Why? Okay, why couldn't some of that money go to reparations of colored people, or whatever you want to say, African descendants? I believe what you're saying as well, but that's even more of a fight, right? Because now you have greedy people saying, man, we're not giving them nothing. Okay, well, since y'all won't give them nothing, America, you benefited from African Americans as well, and you're still benefiting from us. So, to me, it works hand in hand.
So what do you think about Joe Biden's abysmal record? Are you familiar about Joe Biden's abysmal record on criminal justice? The fact that he wrote the crime bill, the fact, even we can go to Obama, how Obama didn't really help African Americans. Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water. We can go back to Clinton and the era of the super predators. Are you voting for Joe Biden? What are the parameters right now? Because people are saying, we need to vote we need to get Trump out of the White House. But then we get Trump out of the White House and we still have the system that is systemic racism that is still keeping Black people, and then also poverty that is keeping all people on the ground. How do we fight that when the Democratic Party and the Republican Party both haven't done much for working people and people of color at all?
Absolutely. I think in all that you said is a very good point. But I think for me, and you can hear me speak about this in probably every segment that I'll speak on, but I think our first issue that we need to deal with is our local communities, because this is where we're being tackled at, right? This is where we live at. This is our backyard. And when we focus on our local communities, then we can start going to state level, then we can start going to national level. But we need to focus on our local communities. As for me voting for Joe Biden, at this point, yes, he has my vote. He has my vote, because here's the thing. When it comes to Trump has downplayed a lot of people in the public and seemed that he didn't care about certain things in the public. That's point number one. Point number two is whoever gets in office is going to have a whole lot of work in store for them with rebuilding this economy, with rebuilding America, with where do we go from here? So I think anybody that comes into office is going to have a lot of work on their hands. But for people to say that Obama hasn't done anything for African Americans, and we go all the way back to Bill Clinton and all this kind of stuff, my thing is we keep wondering what other people are going to do for us. But my question is, what are we going to do for ourselves?
Yeah.
Right. I hear a lot of people say that, we're looking for another stimulus packet. Right. My thing is, okay, well, what you do with the first one?
Yeah.
So that, we can continue looking for what are we going to get from people and this gimme thing. But we have to have the mindset, okay, what if they don't never do anything for us? What are we going to do for ourselves? How can our local communities actually build us up together where we can actually own things, and we can get to owning lands, and we get to owning real estates, and our businesses started to grow, and that we can actually grow as a community. Because I really think that's our main focus. Our community is our main focus right now, because if we keep looking for Trump to change something for us, it's never going to happen. If we keep looking for Biden to change something for us, it's never going to happen, because what they do is the same thing I said on the steps of City Hall the other day, is that you can bake us a good cake, but when it's time for us to slice that cake, it falls apart, because what you've been presenting to us is just a bunch of mess for you to get into office.
But even on the local level, though, like if we're talking on the local level, we have DA Jackie Lacey. Jackie Lacey is a Democrat. Jackie Lacey refuses to prosecute killer cops. People have been protesting outside of her the Hall of Justice for 3 years. I mean, every Wednesday, the Black Lives Matter has a protest there, and and to me, it's like, well, yeah, I agree. We need to focus on the local level. That a lot of people don't. That's how they don't make change. But what is a Democrat offering that a Republican isn't on the local level to get us to vote? In other words, I just feel like both parties have failed the people, and have failed to educate people. And we have also failed to hold them accountable. So how do we take it from, from we need to vote blue no matter who to we need to vote to make sure that we hold these people accountable? How do we do that? If they can count on our vote no matter what we do, just because they're Democrats, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree that the system has felt us, whether you are a Democrat or you're a Republican or you independent. I believe that you felt this. But that's why I say that I believe that it takes our community to look at what we need. And so it is up to us to actually vote for these people that are in these places. But then also, if they don't hold up to their bargain of the deal, it's also up to us to get them out of these positions. So my question is, yes, DA Lacy has not filed any charges against any of these officers. They've never been convicted, any of that stuff. But then also we keep voting her back into office.
Right.
So I think that's the main issue, is that we keep going for these people that are playing patty cake game with us. And we keep going for these people that keep playing ring around the rosy with us. And guess what? We keep playing the same game they're playing. Yeah. So until we stop playing these games with them and saying, look, this is what we want to see. This is what we want to do in our communities. And we're not going to stop protesting until we see it. We're not going to stop rioting until we see it, because rioting is not the problem. What we consider the problem is looting. We don't want nobody messing up our businesses, because then we're going to be the ones to pay for it to get it back up and running, right? So we're going to keep rioting until we see change. We're going to keep protesting until we see change. We're going to keep meeting up at City Hall, wherever we need to meet up. Jackie, I believe the other week, it was in front of Jackie Lacey's house. And so we have to keep showing and let our voices be made heard. And I saw a thing on the news yesterday where Jackie Lacey actually came on the news saying, I'm looking to meet with church leaders and community leaders and stuff like that. Okay, you've been meeting with church leaders. You've been meeting with community leaders. When are we going to actually see you do this change? And so it goes back to us holding each other accountable for the people that we put in these offices. If you say you're not going to, if you say you're going to do it and we find out you're not going to do it, we need you out of office. We need you to be forcibly resign. If that's what we have to do, then that's what we have to do, so that we can put somebody else in that position. And so I think that we have to start holding ourselves accountable, and we have to start holding the people that we put in these places accountable to get this job done.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to play ring around the rosy with the Democrats anymore. I think the buck stops here, especially when it comes to Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden is actually maybe even further to the right of Donald Trump when it comes to criminal justice. He wrote the crime bill, you know what I'm saying? And he's a imperialist through and through. But let me talk about this other subject right here, because I have Dr. Cornel West, a little quick video of Dr. Cornel West talking about Obama and what Obama is. Let's listen to this real quick. I got a question right after it.
I mean, I'm glad there was not a right-wing takeover, but we end up with a Rockefeller Republican in blackface with Barack Obama, so that our struggle in regard to poverty intensifies.
That's a pretty rough assessment of President Obama.
Oh, that's what we have. That's what we have. Richard Nixon is to the left of him on health care. Richard Nixon's to the left of him on guaranteed income. And the same policies in terms of imperial foreign policy is at work.
Okay, I'll take it a step further and say that Barack Obama was further to the right of Nixon when it came to imperialism. And in 2016, I kind of witnessed something where I observed something happened to me that never really happened to me before. When we were debating online when it came to Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, I had a black woman tell me, well, you should shut up because you're a white man, you don't know better. So I just shut down and I was silenced, because I had never been used to getting into that arena where, always being a leftist, liberal, an activist, we were always on that same side. It was the first time we'd seen this kind of like, oh, we can't say anything. The same thing happened with Barack Obama. Anytime I would chastise Barack Obama, and I got two friends out there watching, Deanna and Randall, they even said we were getting into it, and they said, oh, this is just another white person complaining about Obama. And I shut down. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to overstep my boundaries, whereas I was being compared to a person who had these racist kind of views about Barack Obama, where I was critical of his imperialism, but yet I was shut down simply because I was white. Now, out in these protests, I see a lot of F Trumps. But is it okay to say F Trump without saying F Obama? Because let's not forget that Black Lives Matter started when Obama was in office. So is it okay to say F Trump without saying F Obama, F Bush, F Clinton, F the whole system? Your opinions?
My opinion is this. One thing you'll probably never hear me say is F Obama, because I respect the fact that as a Black male in America, he made it to be president. And so I respect that. And so that's just my opinion. That's my baggage of it. And so whether people say he didn't do a lot for African American or the African American community, that's fine. But I believe him just being in office is a step for us, and that's my viewpoint on it. But it goes back into accountability. I mean, we could say F Trump or whoever you want to say F to. You could say it all day long, but until we start holding these people accountable, what they're going to do. But here's my problem. Here's my problem that I've been seeing, and this is just my personal opinion. My thing with Trump is you disrespect people in front of the whole nation. You combat with people on Twitter. You talk about our immigrants and you talk about our African Americans. I mean, he called African American thugs the other day. And he talks about immigrants and crossing the border and all this kind of stuff, right? So my thing is, for me, just in my mindset, he doesn't have any respect for people as a whole. And that's just my mindset. I mean, if that's how you feel, I don't think you should have been president in any case, number one. Number two, I think that we seeing the same thing that we seen that California's seen with Governor Schwarzenegger. Why are we just putting people in these positions just because they have a name for themselves? They don't have no political backing. They don't have no political background. We just voting for them because they have influence, right? And so I think that's something, and it goes back into what I said before. We need to actually start dissecting these people that we're putting into place, that we're voting into place. And that goes for Trump, that goes for Biden, that goes for Obama, that goes for Clinton, that goes for everybody. We need to start dissecting these things. But then when it comes down to it, it's either Biden or Trump. And so that's the reality of it, of where we are now. It's either who you're going to vote for, this person. And I don't tell people who to vote for. That's on you. You have to do your research. I can answer your question if you want me to, but it's either Biden or Trump. And from my opinion, and who I'm standing with right now, it's Biden.
Well, we can go third party. We can break the system. To really break the system, we got to be nuanced about it, like you said. And that's not giving power simply to Biden just because he's a Democrat. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I understand the fear of having Trump for another 4 years might seem scary. But if we continue, we'll just fall further back when it comes to getting some serious progressive change and all the issues that really mean something to all of us. And, when you talk about Obama, yeah, we get Trump at the border who's really nasty about immigrants and he, just terrible. But behind closed doors, Obama allowed coups to happen where a lot of these people came from Guatemala, Honduras, whatnot, because a coup overthrew him at the direction of Obama. So what's worse and what's better? Just because he was nice about it and was respectful, he really caused a serious problem. And then the way Trump kind of dealt with it, he was mean. But that, once again, those people would have been flocking here if there wasn't a coup in his country that Obama was really bad when it came to imperialism. Isn't that a quagmire that we have to watch out for?
I think, yeah, of course you have to watch out for it. But to me, I don't think that any political leader is perfect. I think that they all have flaws. I think we have to watch out for what we see these flaws are. And we have to start questioning things. But then also, I believe that we're all are subject to our own opinion as well in regards to every political party and every political person that we're putting in these offices. And so, like I said before, nobody that comes into any office is perfect. They all have flaws. They all have a background of being flaws. But it goes into the place of, when are we going to start holding these people accountable for what we want to see? And so what I want to see and what you might want to see is probably two different things. And so, that's something that we have to agree to disagree with.
And I just want to, one more thing on that. Joe Biden and House Democrats like Nancy Pelosi have come out and said that they do not support defunding the police. So for me, and I'm assuming for you, that's a very important issue. How do you get Joe Biden to support that if you're already guaranteeing your vote to him without him supporting it? How do we push and hold Joe Biden accountable if he's already saying, no, I don't support defunding the police? Why should he get the black vote then if he's not going to do something as minimal as defunding the police?
Well, it goes into. I mean, I haven't even heard Trump say he was going to support or not support it. Number one. Then also you have the other day when Trump actually in front of the White House, he actually gave the order to mace the protesters that was out there so he can take a picture in front of a boarded up church who wasn't even open anymore just for a photo op, right? And so we can even go into that situation. But the thing is, like for me, I mean, my thing is not to persuade Biden. My thing is to persuade our local community that this is what we need to do. Because I mean, it's going to take a whole lot of us to actually persuade the I won't say future or what we consider might be the future president of the United States to stand on our side when it comes to this. My job and my position is for our local government to see that this is what we need. This is what we actually need to do.
I see. Okay.
So my last question is pretty much like, so we see a lot of these groups together out there kind of marching in the street, but Black Lives Matter or any type of organized group, I never see them really join with like groups like libertarians. Now, libertarians, there's a lot of libertarians out there, and they hate the police. They very strongly dislike the police for different reasons, because they don't believe in the surveillance state, whatnot, and they believe strongly in their civil liberties and stuff. If you ever see a lot of those videos where somebody's pulled over and he starts asking the questions, are you detaining me? Am I free to go? No, I don't feel, those are libertarians. Now, they want criminal justice reform because they don't want to incarcerate people. They want to decriminalize all the drugs out there, whatnot, which leads to a lot of people being incarcerated. Why haven't these groups joined together? Is it important that the why we're out there is more important than what's actually the common goal of going after the elites and breaking down the police brutality in the systems that exist? Is the why very, very important? Or can we just find a way to bond together?
I think the why is important because we all have to understand why we're out here, why we're protesting, why we're rioting, why is this such a big deal? Number one. Number two, I think that we are stronger together. I think that the issue that we're facing with now is that, and I think it goes into what we see in a lot of these arenas, is that we want to have a name for ourselves. And so I think that's why a lot of people, a lot of organizations don't work together, because we want the credit. But in my eyes, if we actually get the job done, isn't that enough credit for itself? If we actually stop black people from dying at the hands of police brutality, isn't that enough credit? If we just stop people being pulled over for no apparent reason, just because of how they look or what they think. Like, I used to get pulled over because I look high, but people don't know that I'm half Filipino, right? And so, I just got tired eyes, but it looks like I'm high. So, that's just what it is. And so, can we stop this? Is this actually what we want to stop? And so I think that the why really does matter. But I do believe that at some point, we need to start working together. It doesn't matter who's over it. It doesn't matter who's leading it, just as long as we tackle the common goal.
Anything else?
Who is your favorite activist or influential civil rights activist of all time?
That's funny. So I have two answers to this, and Craig actually know one of them. But my first one is, of course, Martin Luther King, and I say that because as a kid, I used to just grow up telling people that Martin Luther King was my godfather, and he had a dream about me coming in 1992. And so that was just me. So that was, that was our funny joke. And the funny thing is, my next one is actually Dr. Cornel West. I was a part of Tavis Smiley Foundation. They have a Youth to Leader thing. And so Cornel West was one of our mentors in that whole movement. So every time he comes to town, I'm there. Every time he speaks, I'm listening. I believe that he has a wealth of wisdom, but then also he's not biased. So if he can call you out on your stuff. I've seen him call Obama out on his stuff plenty of times. I've seen him call a lot of leaders out on their stuff plenty of times. So he's not scared to call people out when they're actually wrong, or when you say that you're going to do something and you don't hold up to your end of the bargain.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the spirit of those two gentlemen, if you'd like to give a speech real quick to the people out there and just let them know what you're all about and what we need to do moving forward, and we'll end the show on that.
Absolutely. So with what I would say to everybody is that, now is the time to kill silence. Silence has been a cancer in all of our communities for so long, meaning that when one person is silent, we all feel that we all need to be silent when it comes to these things. And so now we actually have found a cure to this cancer that we call silence. And that means that cure is actually you using your voice to speak up for what you believe in, for what you feel is right, for the powers that be. And so I would say this is that enough is enough for us actually taking just yes from people just because they want our votes. Enough is enough for them baking this cake and trying to feed it to us, and the cake is not even all the way done. Enough is enough for us as brothers and sisters of dying on our streets. If you were on City Hall the other day, you will hear a quote that I said, is that our blood is actually crying from these streets.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in Pasadena, not just in Memphis, not just in Atlanta, not just in Texas, but also in Minneapolis, also in Minnesota, also in Georgia. All these places, our blood of the African American communities are crying out. And so we've been crying out for help for so long. But I believe now we're actually at the breaking point, and all of our voices is being heard. Our prayers are being answered. Our cries from the street are being heard from our people, not even just from the African American community, but from our other brothers and sisters of other races as well. So my encouragement to you guys is to work together. And I get this question a lot. What does our next steps look like? So for me, next steps look like, number one, to never put a muzzle over your mouth. That people have been putting a muzzle over our mouths for so long. And so it's up to us to take that muzzle off and actually let it be known about what's right and what's wrong. And then number two, get out there and vote. Dissect these leaders, get to know them, start knocking on their doors, start emailing them, start calling them, because your vote actually matters. But then number three, what does next steps look like is that we have to start supporting each other businesses. And we can't look for the government to give us stimulus packages every time something happens, but we have to bring wealth into our own communities so that we can be stable and that we can grow together. And so that's what it looks like to me. And then you can even go to number 4, which we would call defunding the police, meaning that we don't want to see the police die. We do believe that we need police officers, but we do believe that police officers should just be police officers. And so we can actually use this funding to actually fund some of our programs in the community that we really want to see when it comes to youth development, when it comes to economic development, when it comes to financial literacy, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to homelessness. And so that's all we're saying. So that's what next steps actually looks like to me.
Hey, Brandon, thank you so much for joining the show. I think we have to, this is only the first one. We have a lot more things to talk about. Reading a lot of the comments in the chats. We got to talk about MMT down the road. We got to talk about electoral politics. There's a lot going on. I just wanted to lay the foundation down. You're an awesome guest, and I look forward to having more conversations and seeing you out there in those rallies and talking more of my position and seeing what we can learn and what we can do moving forward to really bring us together and take down the injustices that not only black people are feeling, but people of other races, like you said, are feeling, and come together and stop the elite. For Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella,
Jonny Tsunami on the 1s and 2s for Brandon Lamar.
Convo out. See you guys soon. Bye.
Peace.